The world is a scary place to live in. Everywhere you turn, there are people who are capable of committing some horrible crime. There are some people out there who prey on innocent children and they kidnap them for their own sick pleasure. Well, how's it going, YouTube? I'm your host for this one, Landon Do Not Sing, and welcome back to another Most Amazing Top 10 video. In case you guys haven't seen part 1 of this video, I'll make sure to put the link in the description down below, and also you guys can click right over here and get caught up, watch part 1, and then come over here for part 2. Alright, so for those of you guys who are caught up, this right here, this is the top 10 scary kidnapping stories, part 2. Starting this list off, in at number 10, we have the kidnapping of Cherish Periwinkle. Cherish's mother met a man while she was shopping with her 3 kids at a dollar store. He told him that his wife had a $100 gift card to Walmart and he would buy the kids clothes if she agreed to meet him at a nearby Walmart. The mother assumed that he was married and she was unaware that he was a registered sex offender, and she obviously didn't know that he has been released from prison just 20 days ago. Surveillance footage from the Walmart shows them shopping at Walmart for over an hour, and it shows Cherish going with the man to look at some shoes in another section. The mother didn't think much of it because she felt safe in the store. The man said that he would take Cherish to the front of the store to the McDonald's and get them all a treat. The mother had no idea that would be the last time ever seeing her daughter. The little girl's body was found next to a creek. She was covered by a fallen log. There was grass all over her and branches, so obviously he tried to hide her. The medical examiner said that the trauma that she had suffered was brutal. I'm not going to go into detail because it's honestly way too gut-wrenching. This is exactly why you should really be cautious with strangers and never go somewhere with someone you don't know. Even no matter where you are, you felt safe in a Walmart, still don't trust a stranger. Kidnapped by an online predator brings us to number 9. 13-year-old Alicia snuck out of her home in Pittsburgh to meet someone that she met online. Now this is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. What happened next is a complete nightmare, and that's why it is so important to be safe when you're out there online. Alicia has been talking to some guy who she thought was around, the same age as her. He groomed her for several months until she decided to meet him in person, and that's when he convinced her to go into his car, and that's when she started to fear for her life. Once they got to his house, he took her to a room in the basement that had a padlock on it. He then took her clothes off and put a dog collar around her neck and dragged her upstairs. He chained her to the floor next to his bed and abused her for 4 days. Her captor broadcasted himself abusing her online, but one of the viewers recognized the little girl in the video from the missing posters. He called the FBI and they're able to trace where he lived from his IP address, and that's how Alicia was rescued. An Uber kidnapping story drives into number 8. A 19-year-old woman from Florida said that she was almost kidnapped by her Uber driver after she was heading home from a night out with her friends. The woman said that she had to jump out of the car window when she realized that her Uber driver wasn't driving her home. She posted this picture onto Twitter and said, PSA, public service announcement. Today I realized that being kidnapped from an Uber driver is 100% real. I'm so thankful that I got out by jumping out of a moving car window, and running for help has to be the scariest thing I've ever gone through. I want girls to realize that this happened and to be safe always. To prevent something like this happening to you, you can always ride home with a friend or share your trip status, so even when you're in an Uber, you can share your status with a friend or a family member, or always have a reliable ride from someone you trust planned out. And now at number 7, we have an unexplained kidnapping. 6-year-old Adam Welsh, well, he was kidnapped from a Sears department store in Florida back in 1981. So we started off here with Walmart and now we have Sears, another place in public. Unfortunately, his remains were discovered 2 weeks later. A convicted serial killer named Otis Toole, well, he confessed to Adam's murder, but at the time, police didn't believe him, so he wasn't charged. I mean, what the heck is going on? If someone confessed to a crime, why don't you lock him up while you do an extensive investigation? There was a theory that Adam could have been a victim of Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer who abducted young boys and ate their flesh, but this theory was thrown out. Authorities have since announced that they actually think Otis Toole did murder the boy and he died in prison back in 1996, so they closed the case. Number 6, taken from her bedroom. Elizabeth Smart was only 14 years old when she was kidnapped and taken in the middle of the night by a man who sliced through the window screen of the bedroom that she shared with her little sister. Is this real life right now? How scary is that? The kidnapper pressed the blade against her throat and told her that if she screamed, he would kill her entire family. The man dragged Elizabeth out of the house and then took her to his place in the mountains. He tied her up with a metal cable and did terrible things to her for a period of 9 months. There were no leads until her sister recognized the voice of the kidnapper to be a family acquaintance, and she quickly turned him to the police, and Elizabeth was finally rescued. Amber Hagerman takes us to number 5. In January 1996, 9-year-old Amber Hagerman was kidnapped by an unknown man who physically forced her off her bike, and he threw her into his black pickup truck. 4 days later, her body was found in a drainage ditch several miles away from her home. What makes this whole thing even more terrifying is the fact that the kidnapping and the murder has never been solved. The only positive thing that has come from this devastating story is the warning system we now have in place called Amber Alert. I'm sure you guys heard about it, and the Amber Alert was actually going off like crazy when I was seeing the Avengers movie Endgame. The whole theater got it. It was actually pretty terrifying. Well, the Amber Alert was launched in July 1997, and since then, hundreds of abducted kids have been rescued and brought back home. Patty Hearst climbs onto this list at number 4. Patricia Hearst was kidnapped in 1974 by the Symbionese Liberation Army, which is an American terrorist group. During the first 19 months of being held captive, well, she participated in a bunch of serious crimes like bombings and armed robberies. Because of those crimes, she became a fugitive, but she was eventually arrested. During her trial, she said that she was forced to do all of these things because they were threatening to kill her if she didn't. Her kidnapping case is highly talked about because it is believed that she suffered from Stockholm Syndrome, which means that she fell in love with her captor despite all of the terrible things that she was being forced to do. She was originally sentenced to 35 years in prison, but it was later reduced to just 7 years. And then the sentence was commuted by Jimmy Carter, and she was later pardoned by Bill Clinton. The school bus kidnapping makes its way onto this list at number 3. On July 15, 1976, 3 men hijacked a school bus was carrying 26 kids in Chowchilla, California. They were trying to get $5 million in ransom money in exchange for a busload of kids. The kidnapper forced the driver and the children to climb through a hole in the ground into a van that was buried. After the kidnapper sealed the hole, they took off and left the hostages buried alive for 16 hours. As you can see from the pictures, the kidnappers must have been planning this for a really long time. The truck looks like it could be one giant coffin, and I don't think that the kidnappers had any intentions of anyone surviving. But thankfully they were able to escape by stacking mattresses, moving the metal plate that sealed the roof, and by digging through 3 feet of dirt. These kids were only 5 to 14 years old, and they managed to escape from such a terrifying experience. And even though they were buried for 16 hours, everyone managed to make it out alive. So that story had a really happy ending. Up next, number 2, we have a scary hitchhiking incident. Colin Stan was a young teenager who was trying to hitch a ride to her friend's house. She thought that she was a really good hitchhiker because she knew when to turn down rides. But when a blue van pulled over, she saw that a man and a woman were in the car and there was a baby seat in the back. So she thought that this would be a safe ride. Well, she was very wrong. Shortly after picking her up, the man held a knife to her neck and forced her head into a box that weighed 20 pounds. But that's not where the torture ends. She was kidnapped and held in their home for 7 years as a slave. She was forced to stay inside of a wooden box and kept underneath her bed for 23 hours a day. She was constantly being tortured and abused for those 7 years, but she eventually escaped and she was brought back home. Kidnapped for 18 years brings us to number 1. JAYCEE Lee DUGARD was walking to her school bus when a man named Philip Garardo shocked her with the stun gun and took her back to his cabin. She was only 11 years old when she was taken, and despite a huge search party, no one was able to find JAYCEE. Philip and his wife threw a blanket over her head, took her to the backyard where she was handcuffed and thrown into a freezing soundproof shed. This is the place where she would spend the next 18 years of her life. During that time, she had been physically and mentally abused. She gave birth to 2 daughters without any medical help. Police regularly visited the house because Philip was on probation, but they had no idea what was going on. She had very little contact with the outside world, and she was told that her family didn't want her anymore. Well, after nearly 20 years of being held captive, she was finally rescued, and Philip was sentenced to 431 years to life in prison after he pleaded guilty to kidnapping, and his wife was sentenced to 36 years to life, which I don't understand why she got less time. Well, since being free, JAYCEE is looking forward to living her new life. Well, there you guys have it. I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. Thanks so much for being a fan of Most Amazing Top 10, and I will see you guys all in the next Most Amazing Top 10 video.